Brown chicken, brown cow.
All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Money's Crazy Mind and Crossing the Mic crossover event, talking all about that crazy mofo, John Wayne Gacy.
Yes.
So, as always, I am, and only because tomorrow's Ghostbusters Day, I am Lee, too hot to handle, too cold to hold. You call the Ghostbusters because they in control. Motherfucking money. Joining with me by he's slimy, Tyler, and who you gonna call? Josh. What's going on, guys?
Sums me up pretty well.
What up?
All right. So as I stated, tomorrow is Ghostbusters Day. For those of you that haven't been around for the last 38 years, Ghostbusters Day is the official anniversary of the release date of the original 1984 Ghostbusters movie starring Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, and God rest his soul, Harold Ramis. Directed by God rest his soul, Ivan Reitman. Of course, it also had Annie Potts, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis. Tomorrow is the official anniversary of the release. I'm already geared up for it. But there's actually something really special going on at Sony Pictures tomorrow. They are doing a live screening of Ghostbusters Afterlife, the newest addition to the franchise. They're inviting all Ghostbusters fans from all over the world to join them at the Sony lot and Ghost Corps headquarters to view the screening. And rumor has it that there is going to be a special announcement by Jason Reitman, the director and co-writer of Ghostbusters Afterlife, and Gil Kanan, the other co-writer of Ghostbusters Afterlife, regarding the future of the franchise. And as we already found out at CinemaCon a couple months ago, we're getting another movie. So hopefully the announcement is something like, hey, we've already got the script written and we're already starting to start filming.
Mm-hmm.
However, I hope they can put filming off until after Finn Wolfhard finishes season 5 of Stranger Things so that doesn't get delayed like season 4 did.
Are they actually doing season 5?
Yes, it's already been announced.
Oh, okay.
Well, they were hoping that they'd be able to get it done in 4, but they weren't. The story's just too big.
Yeah.
And they had originally said it was either going to be 4 or 5 seasons. So since they couldn't finish the story out for season 4, they're coming back for season 5.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to end up the story.
I'm prepping too.
Yeah. Hellfire Club, baby. Just leave Vecna where he is.
Yeah.
But
you have no idea what I'm talking about, do you, Josh?
No.
Josh needs to use his Google machine for more than just Google.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more lost than a virgin on Saturday night.
That was some dark humor there. All right, so enough of the fun and games. Let's get into the blood and guts.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, let's just kind of give a brief recap of what we talked about last week. Last week, we had talked about the fact that there is this crazy guy running around Chicago, butchering people left and right and hiding them under the crawl space of his house. So we kind of talked about the fact that even before, I want to make sure I have the correct number here. Before the murder of 33 men and boys, he had been arrested previously for sodomy of a 15-year-old boy. Pretended to play nice in prison, was able to get out after 18 months instead of serving 10 years, and moved back to Chicago, which was a stipulation of his parole. Moved in with his mommy, and people started missing.
Mm-hmm.
He was also married at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you can kind of tell that when John got bored, whenever his wife was out of town for whatever work she did, that's when boys and men would come up missing. So they finally divorced in 1976. And that's when the murders started picking up more frequently. At one point, it was about 1 or 2 murders a year. Now we're ramping up to, this is how he accumulated 33 bodies, 26 of which were buried under the crawl space of his house. So before we get into the kind of like the rest of his victims here, we're not going to get into all 33 of them. Obviously, we'd be here until next year.
Plus, I don't think they've only identified. Actually, I'm not sure how many they've identified.
I know that there are still a few that are unnamed graves.
Yes.
However, we'll get into some of them, because they all take place within the span of 2 years. Plus, we want to get into the trial and some of the aftermath that happened after the trial and everything like that. The way that they've been able to starting to identify some of these bodies that have been found, or that were unable to be identified back in 78 when they uncovered all of this. Plus, some of them were thrown into a river, so those bodies are probably a little bit harder to identify anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But in the documentary, because we are kind of talking about a documentary that aired on Netflix, Conversations with a Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes. In that documentary, there was a scene at near the middle of it, or the beginning of the second part, I should say, where they finally talked about the fact that they got a search warrant to search Gacy's house because they're looking for one particular victim of his. And they were questioning him about it. They couldn't smell anything at first. Then the air conditioning kicked on, and then this smell started permeating through the house of dead bodies. And that's when John started freaking out, kicked the detectives out of their house, blamed it on, I don't remember exactly what he blamed it on. I think it was maybe a dead raccoon or something underneath underneath the crawl space. And obviously it wasn't. It was 26 rotting bodies. But so they left and they tried getting a second search warrant, which at that time was a little bit harder to get and to come by than it would be today. Because I think, today they can probably get as many search warrants as they want. But, back in 1978, that was a little bit harder to come by. So they had to convince a judge that they had more than enough evidence to arrest this guy for everything that he had done. Now, they did find evidence that some of these missing people were found, had something to do with him. They found IDs. They found high school IDs. They found class rings, clothing, even personal property.
And a few
as well
worked for him too.
Yes. So, they decided, we have enough to try to get this guy. We just need to find the bodies. Without the bodies, we can't make a case. So they were able to get the second search warrant, and this is what they unfortunately uncovered. So John had a moment after his wife left called the cruising years. And that was the time that he started to increase the frequency of the excursions for sex with young males, often referred to these jaunts as cruising. Gacy committed most of his murders between 76 and 78, largely lived alone following his divorce. He later referred to these as his cruising years. Although Gacy remained gregarious and civic-minded, several neighbors noticed erratic changes in his behavior after his divorce. This included seeing him keeping a company of young men, hearing his car arrive or depart in the early hours of the morning, seeing lights in his home switch on and off in the early hours. One neighbor later recollected for several years she could... Okay, we did talk about that because we mentioned the screaming.
Yes.
And we asked why nobody would ever call the cops and say, hey, the clown guy has people screaming in his living room. You might want to come help. But in 1976, they probably didn't have free nights and weekends.
Oh man, that's a throwback.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Welcome back to early 2000s cell phones.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So 1 month after his divorce was finalized, Gacy abducted and murdered 18-year-old Daryl Simmons. last seen alive in Chicago on April 6, 1976. Gacy buried him underneath the dining room with a section of cloth lodged in his throat. 5 weeks later, on the afternoon of May 14th, 15-year-old Randall Raffett disappeared shortly after returning to his uptown home from a dental appointment. He was last seen by his grandmother later that afternoon. Hours after Raffett was last seen by his family, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished as he was walking home from his sister's apartment. He and Raffett were close acquaintances. Both were buried together in the crawl space. Investigators believe the two were murdered on the same evening.
Sick individual.
Sad part is I don't know if Gacy ever admitted to those. I mean, obviously the bodies were found in his house, so he had to admit to something, but I don't think we ever really know exactly what happened to those boys. Like, we don't know the extent, but we know that he has a style of killing, and it's very close to, shockingly, it's very close to BTK in the way that he did it. So, on June 3rd, Gacy killed 17-year-old Lakeview teenager Michael Bonin. Disappeared while traveling to Chicago from Waukegan. Gacy strangled Bonin with a ligature and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, Gacy married a 16-year-old uptown youth named William Carroll and buried him in a common grave in the crawl space. Carroll seems to have been the first of 4 victims known to have been murdered between June 13th and August 6th. There were 3 between 16 and 17 years old, and one unidentified murder victim appears to have been an adult. We're not even through 1976 yet.
No.
On August 5th, 16-year-old Minnesota youth named James Hackinson, last known to have phoned his family, possibly from Gacy's home. Hackinson died of suffocation. His body was buried in the crawl space beneath the body of a 17-year-old Benninsville youth named Rick Johnston, who was last seen alive on August 6th. Gacy is thought to have murdered 2 further unidentified males between August and October. On October 24th, Gacy abducted and killed teenage friends Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino. 2 days later, a 19-year-old construction worker, William Bundy, disappeared after attending a party. Bundy died of suffocation and buried him under his master bedroom. He apparently worked for Gacy. December 1970. Oh, wait. I went ahead just a little bit too much. Between November and December, Gacy murdered a 21-year-old named Francis Alexander. His last contact with his family was a phone call to his mother made sometime in November. Alexander was buried in the crawl space directly beneath the room Gacy used as his office. So either Gacy really liked the smell of dead bodies, or that quicklime is amazing at hiding the smell of rotting flesh.
I don't think they ever went into that about him saying whether he even talked about the smell at all or not.
I mean, apparently, because he had those detectives standing in his house and they didn't smell anything until the air conditioning kicked on. So, I mean, maybe the quicklime did cover it up, or maybe he just kept putting insulation in the floor so that the smell wouldn't come up.
Or just got used to it.
I don't know, because I would think, if you're a cop and you're a homicide detective, you're used to the smell of rotting flesh.
Yeah.
And you would pick it up almost immediately. But it also goes to show that they couldn't smell it outside either. Because the second you walk onto the property, like if you walk onto somebody's property that has like a lot of like animal waste and stuff on it, you smell it the second you walk up. So, you would think that something smells dead, but who knows? Maybe the houses were built just that well in the 70s. Who knows?
Yep.
But in December, another employee of Gacy's, Gregory Godzik, disappeared. Last saw him outside her house as after he had driven her home following a date. He worked for them for less than 3 weeks before he disappeared. Informed the family that Gacy had him dig trenches for some kind of drain tiles in his crawl space. Godzik's car was later found abandoned in Niles. His parents and older sister, Eugenia, contacted Gacy about Godzik's disappearance. Gacy claimed that he had run away. Having indicated before that he wished to do so, Gacy also claimed to have received an answering machine message from Godzik shortly after he disappeared. When asked if he could play the message back to Godzik's parents, Gacy said he had erased it.
Convenient.
I was just about to say that, too. Great minds think alike. All right, we are finally into 1977. So Gacy was plenty busy in 1976. On January 20th, 1977, Gacy lured 19-year-old John Zick to his house on the pretext of buying his Plymouth Satellite. He later confessed to strangling Zick in his spare bedroom, claiming Rossi was asleep in the house the following morning. Gacy later sold the car to Rossi for $300.
That they mentioned in the special.
2 months later, on March 15th, a 20-year-old Michigan native named John Prestige disappeared. Or maybe it's Prestige. I don't know.
I've heard it both ways.
Have you, though?
No.
Okay. He was later seen leaving a near North Side restaurant. He was buried in the crawl space above the body of Francis Alexander. So he's pretty much just stacking bodies. Shortly before his disappearance, Prestige had mentioned that he had obtained work with a local contractor. Gacy murdered one additional unidentified youth and buried him in the crawl space in the spring or early summer of 1977. The exact time of this murder is unknown. July 5th, Gacy killed a 19-year-old from Crystal Lake. Damn, Jason must be pissed about that one. Matthew Bowman. Bowman's mother last saw him at a suburban train station, had intended to travel to Harwood Heights for a scheduled court appointment regarding unpaid parking tickets. The following month, Rossi was arrested for stealing gasoline while driving Zick's car. Gas station attendant noted the license plate, and police traced the car to Gacy's house. When questioned, Gacy told the officers that Zick had sold the car to him in February, saying he needed money to leave town. After checking the VIN number, the car belonged to Zick. The police did not pursue the matter further, although they did inform Zick's mother that her son had sold his car. Seems to me that the police just are stupid. What's up, Dave? All right, so before we move on with the rest of the 1977 here, we've already got a ton of dead bodies laid under the porch. And like I said, it just seems like he's just stacking bodies one on top of each other and everything like that. Some of these names were mentioned in the documentary. Some of them, obviously, we're hearing about kind of fresh here. So to that point, I think that while this documentary did a really good job of kind of documenting a lot of the things that had happened during all of this, they did focus on one victim and one victim only. Do you consider that, considering how many bodies obviously that we have here, do you consider that to be a disservice to the victims, or should they have only focused on one victim?
Maybe a little bit of a disservice. Like, I get why they were focusing on this one particular, because it was the one that led up to him being caught and then finding the other victim. So without, that, we may, who knows how long it would have been if we would have ever known anything about any of these.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a disservice, maybe, but at the same time, I guess for what they were going for the special, I mean, it kind of, If they did another one, like, more so leading up more in detail for that, then that would probably be, they would focus more on more of them. But for
Yeah.
this one, I get why they did that, just because it
Mhm.
was his disappearance was what led them to finally catch him. So, yes and no.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, but again, we're also talking about 33 victims.
Right.
So, I mean, they could have done a 10-part special and probably
Mhm.
still wouldn't have gotten into the bulk of his victims. So I can
Right.
understand. And like you said, it was that one victim that led them to finding out that Gacy is the perpetrator of all these crimes. So, and even though, I'm reading this from a Wikipedia article, most of this Wikipedia article comes from the tapes that they played the snippets from in this special, because obviously that's the only way that some of these details would have been known, especially since, as we're finding out, some of these bodies were sitting there rotting for 2 years or more.
Yes.
So by that point, a lot of the evidence that would have said, well, this is how so-and-so died, was long gone, and also had rotting flesh from other bodies falling on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, Josh, what do you think about all of this that we've kind of gone through already? And we're only 20 minutes into the show.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah. That's putting it mildly.
Man, a few words.
Mm-hmm. That's usually my job.
But you're kind of on point on this one, though.
Yeah.
We all have our niches.
Cool.
Scared an English teacher with a paper about serial killers in 10th grade.
I got extra credit and almost had a paper published when I was a senior in high school for very extensive work on why Marilyn Manson was the only person that made sense after Columbine. So, I mean, all right, think about that. They interview Marilyn Manson for a documentary, and he was asked the question, what would you have said differently to these kids that nobody else said to him? And he had the only legitimate answer out of anybody that they talked to. I wouldn't have said a word. I would have listened, because that's what nobody else did. So at that point, Marilyn Manson becomes the smartest man in the room. Sorry.
At that moment.
Yes. All right. But by the end of 1977, Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. We had 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, son of the Chicago police sergeant.
That was never mentioned.
He lived just 4 blocks from Gacy.
Oy.
He was murdered and buried in the crawl space. September 12th, Gacy had flown to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to supervise a remodeling project. Did not return to Chicago until September 16th, so they had a week of reprieve. Because Gacy is known to have been in another state at the time Gilroy was last seen, this is cited to support Gacy's claim of assistance from one or more of accomplices in several homicides. That's interesting.
Yes.
And I had studied Gacy long before this documentary came out, and I had never heard that he had accomplices.
Nope. If that were the case, it'd have to be, my guess would be someone that worked for him.
Mm-hmm.
It would have had to have been.
Yeah, most definitely. 10 days after Gilroy was last seen, 19-year-old former Marine John Mowry disappeared after leaving his mother's house to walk to his apartment. Gacy strangled Mowry and buried his body beneath the master bedroom. So now we know of 2 confirmed bodies under the master bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
October 17th, 21-year-old Minnesota native Russell Nelson disappeared, was last seen outside of a Chicago bar. Nelson was looking for contracting work. Go figure.
Right.
Gacy murdered him and buried him beneath the guest bedroom. Less than 4 weeks later, Gacy married a 16-year-old Kalamazoo teenager named Robert Winch. He's in the crawl space too.
Mm-hmm.
On November 18th, 20-year-old father of one Tommy Bowling disappeared, leaving a Chicago bar. 3 weeks after the murder of Bowling, on December 9th, 19-year-old U.S. Marine David Talsma disappeared after informing his mother he was going to attend a rock concert in Hammond, Indiana. I'm sorry. He was strangled with a ligature. Guess where his body is?
I give up.
In the crawl space.
Oh, of course.
Very close to the body of John Mowry. So
most of them are getting close to each other. He's running out of space at this point.
you would think so. Now, it's funny because that man, Talsma and Mowry were both Marines. You think he buried them close together for a reason?
Could be.
But I do find that interesting that two Marines were not able to overpower Gacy.
I mean, you let your guard down, anything can happen.
Not only that, but they were probably handcuffed.
Yes.
Because he had played the handcuff game with him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're just about done with 1977 here. Another very productive year for one John Wayne Gacy.
Unfortunately.
December 30th, Gacy abducted 19-year-old student Robert Donnelly from a Chicago bus stop at gunpoint, drove him to his home where he raped, tortured, and repeatedly dunked Donnelly's head into a bathtub until he passed out. Gacy taunted him with statements such as, aren't we playing fun games tonight? Donnelly later testified at Gacy. Whoa, he lived.
Mm-hmm.
Later testified at Gacy's trial that he was in such pain that he asked Gacy to kill him. Gacy replied, I'm getting round to it. After several hours, Gacy drove Donnelly to his workplace and released him, warning him that if he complained to police, they would not believe him. So that's interesting. We already have a stack of bodies probably about 20 deep in the crawl space, and he lets this guy go.
Yep.
I might be pushing it with 20, but we're at least at like 15.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. It's 1978, and John Wayne Gacy's still killing motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
Donnelly did report the assault, and police questioned Gacy on January 6th, 1978. Gacy admitted to having slave sex relationship with Donnelly, but insisted everything was consensual, adding that he did not pay the kid the money that he'd promised him. The police believed him, and no charges were filed.
It's kind of a running theme as well.
Isn't it, though? I mean, is this guy that how highly regarded in the community that he can sit there and be like, hey, dude, like, some 21-year-old just came and said that you had him handcuffed, raped him, beat the shit out of him, threatened to kill him, and dunked his head in a bathtub repeatedly. But, hey, you run basically the homeowners association for the entire city. You've built half our city. So kudos to you. Congratulations. Keep raping and killing motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I mean, am I crazy to think that?
No, it's got to be something like that. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I
go ahead.
I figured the way he let that one go, it was maybe a way to I don't know, add some excitement to it.
Cry for help
so much that he's like,
or even a cry for help.
Yes, yeah. In his own way, probably.
Well, we've got 5 paragraphs for the month of the year of 1978 still as well.
Mm-hmm.
So after having been let go with 15 rotting bodies in his basement, so I'm still trying to figure that one out. But here we go. We're adding body 16. The following month, Gacy killed 19-year-old William Kindred, who disappeared on February 16th after telling his fiancée, who knew Gacy, that he was to spend the evening at the bar. Kindred was the final victim Gacy buried in his crawl space. So I'm sorry, there were 25 bodies in the basement at this point. Welcome, Mr. Number 26. So, all right. The rest of this year, everybody else is buried in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the bodies of John Wayne Gacy's victims are now buried in the water because his house is full. Literally. On March 26th, Gacy lured 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall, who was mentioned in the special, into his car. Shortly after Rignall entered his car, Gacy chloroformed him and drove him to his house, where his arms and head were restrained in a pillory device affixed to the ceiling and his feet locked into another device. Gacy explained to Rignall that he had complete control over him and that he intended to do whatever he wanted, when he wanted, and how he wanted. He then raped and tortured Rignall with various instruments, including lit candles and whips, and repeatedly chloroformed him into unconsciousness. Gacy then drove Rignall to Chicago's Lincoln Park, where he was dumped, unconscious, but alive. Rignall managed to stagger to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were informed of the assault, but did not investigate Gacy. Rignall was able to recall through the haze of that night the Oldsmobile, the Kennedy Expressway, and particular side streets. He and two of his friends staked out the Cumberland exit of the expressway, and in April, Rignall saw the Oldsmobile, which he and his friends followed to 8213 West Summerdale. Police obtained an arrest warrant, and Gacy was arrested on July 15th. He faced trial for battery against Rignall. Battery. Not even rape and torture.
Nope.
But battery. So just goes to show here, he did let some people live. He probably thought Rignall was dead, I'm guessing.
Could be.
If he dumped his body in Lincoln Park. But obviously he was alive. He made it back to his girlfriends, told the police what happened. Gacy finally gets arrested, but they don't smell the decomposing flesh of 26 bodies. So he's arrested for battery. It doesn't say in here how long he was arrested for that. But I'm guessing it had to be quite a few months, because we don't get another body until November 4th.
Yeah.
So, 2 people left alive. Both of them admitted to police that John Wayne Gacy was responsible for it. Well, the first one said John Wayne Gacy. The second one did not, because he didn't remember.
Yes.
But they did finally follow the car, and it led them straight to Gacy. By this point, because you had one person admitted and the police did nothing, but now you have the second, and they're able to get him on battery. By this point, wouldn't you be searching the house to try to see if there's anything else that you could possibly lead to evidence that maybe he's done this to other people?
You would think so.
Not only that, but you have 26 missing motherfuckers. Now,
people bring his name up for other things too,
and now, admittedly, some of these people are from out of state, so the Chicago police do not have jurisdiction to investigate those missing persons, but they do have permission to call those police precincts and say, "Hey, yo, we found the idea of a guy that's missing from your state. Is there a missing persons report?"
Because then back then, I think that was even mentioned in the special when it came to that.
Possible.
Yeah.
Possible. But I mean, I guess, but I mean, Ted Bundy killed people from different states, and he got tried in different states.
Yep.
And they all worked together, and this was around the same time.
Yeah.
You know, plus Dahmer was eating America. Huh?
So I'll pass on that cookbook.
Oh, yeah. How do you think I feel? He's from my state. All right, but by 78, the crawl space had no more room for dead bodies. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
Gacy later confessed to police that he considered stowing bodies in his attic initially, but had been worried about complications arising from leakage. Hey, John, what's that black shit dripping from the ceiling? Oh, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Therefore, he chose to dispose of his victims off the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River. Gacy stated that he had thrown 5 bodies into the river in 1978, one of which he believed had landed on a passing barge.
Jeez.
Only 4 bodies were ever found. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not funny, but in a way it is. I mean, what luck.
Ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, what luck. You just so happen to dispose of body number 32 off a bridge and it lands on a fucking barge and is never found. So you can never be convicted of that murder because there's no body.
Mm-hmm.
Only John Wayne Gacy.
Yep.
The first known victim thrown off the bridge into the Des Plaines River was 20-year-old Timothy O'Rourke. He was murdered in mid-June after leaving his Dover Street apartment to purchase cigarettes. Shortly after, but that was an expensive pack of cigarettes. It cost him his life. Shortly before his disappearance, O'Rourke had told his roommate a contractor on the northwest side had offered him a job. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a popular story.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're in November. Supposedly now Gacy is out of jail for battery.
I don't know that he went to jail for it. He was just on the trial.
Can we
Of course, it doesn't say one way or another.
See, it just takes me to a book.
Mm-hmm.
Leyendecker, 1988, pages 140 to 153. That's a lot of reading. I'll tell you what, I'll look it up during the break. And when we come back from break, I will mention whether or not he did time for the battery.
Word.
All right. So now we have 2 bodies thrown over the bridge. Or maybe just one. One official body is over the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
On November 4th, we got Frank Landingen. His naked body was found close to an inlet in the Des Plaines River by 2 duck hunters in Chanhassen on November 12th. So he went blub, 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 blub for 8 days before he was found. November 24th. Happy Thanksgiving, ladies and gentlemen. 20-year-old Elmwood Park resident James Mazzara disappeared after sharing Thanksgiving dinner with his family. He had informed his sister the day prior to his disappearance that he was working in the construction industry and, quote, doing all right. He was last seen alive walking in the direction of Bughouse Square, carrying a suitcase. Okay. We are at the point now where we are getting to the entire reason that this documentary even got made. And that is the disappearance and murder of Robert Piest. Piest was the main victim of Gacy's that they focused on. And it looks like he was also the last victim of Gacy's. And his family had contacted the police, and they went to the pharmacy where Piest was last seen. The girl behind the counter told him that the last person he was seen with was John Gacy, that he left the store with him, supposedly to talk about a job. neither one of them ever came back into the store. And that is the moment when the detectives showed up at Gacy's house. They had been tailing him and things like that. They finally thought, okay, now's the time to talk to him. Hi, Mr. Gacy. Air conditioning kicks on. John, what the fuck is that smell? So I think I set that up pretty well. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, it did. I mean, that's how, starting out that way and going from there, and then they went just the way they did it, starting out with him and what led to them starting, and then as they get to certain parts that they would find certain things, they went back in, I guess, time, at least in the documentary aspect of it, to cover what they were talking about.
Now, there are a few things that I left out. There is, they go into a little bit of detail here about the first search warrant, the surveillance, the civil lawsuit, and then the second search warrant, and, everything that kind of followed all of the victims, but they did list all the victims, or at least the known victims first. And I'm actually kind of glad that I did go into as much detail as I did about these victims, because I kind of wanted the second hour of the show to be the investigation, the trial, and things like that. So we're kind of getting right into that time frame. So kudos for my timing and things like that there.
Yep.
So Piest is the last known victim. And then, like we mentioned, there were other victims that were identified long after the fact. I mean, we're talking 1978. DNA wasn't even a thing yet. They were still running dental records on people to try to identify them. You couldn't even test somebody's blood at this point. So, forensic science has come a long way from the murder spree of John Wayne Gacy. Now, what I found very interesting here is that pretty much the last year of his murder spree, he couldn't bury bodies in his house anymore because his house was full. Started throwing bodies off the bridge. Now, a couple things about that, and then we'll get into what happened to Piest here in a minute. And then by that time, we'll probably be able to go to break, and then we can come back, talk about all the other stuff. You throw a body into the river. A couple of things you would think would happen. One, you got to weigh it down, or it's going to go blah, 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 and then eventually your secrets are out. From the sound of it, that didn't happen. Gacy let those gases expel and those bodies rise, or at least for one or two of them, because I think they said that Piest body eventually ended up floating too.
Yeah, months later, I think they found him.
But winter. So
Yes.
the lake had frozen. So who knows at what, how, or the river had frozen. Who knows how deep that river is.
Right.
So those gases might have been expelling, but also if the river had completely frozen solid, that's going to stop decomposition until the water heats back up. So, lucky for Gacy on that one, bad luck for Robert Piest, because he probably would have been found a lot sooner. But, I mean, I don't know how cold it gets in Chicago in November, but I would think that some of these bodies that got thrown into the lake or into the river, I mean, November 4th could still kind of be a little warm there. That one probably could have floated up because it did, 7 days or 8 days later on November 12th.
Yep.
But, the November 24th Thanksgiving celebration body, it doesn't say whether or not that body floated anytime soon. And then we know at least one body got a free trip on a barge. So that's 3 out of 5, or 4 out of 5, actually. So here we go with number 5.
Yep.
December 11th, 1978, Gacy visited the Nissen pharmacy in Des Plaines to discuss a potential remodeling deal with the store owner. while within earshot of 15-year-old part-time employee Robert Peast. Gacy mentioned his firm offered hire teenage boys starting at a wage of $5 per hour, which back then was big-time moolah, especially for a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Almost double the pay Peast earned at the pharmacy. Look at that. If I had just read one more sentence. Gacy left the pharmacy. Peast's mother arrived at the store to drive her son home so they could celebrate her birthday. Peast asked his mother to wait, adding that some contractor wants to talk to me about a job. Left the store at 9, promising to return shortly. Wow. I didn't think it was this soon after.
Yeah.
Peast was murdered an hour later at 10 p.m. at Gacy's home. He later stated that at his house, he asked Peast whether there was anything he wouldn't do for the right price, to which Peast replied that he did not mind working hard. In response, Gacy stated good money could be earned by hustling. Although Peast was dismissive, Gacy then duped Peast into donning handcuffs before saying, "I'm going to rape you, and you can't do anything about it." As Peast began weeping, he also stated that he placed the rope around Peast's neck. The boy was crying and scared. Gacy admitted to having received a phone call from a business acquaintance as Peast lay dying, suffocating on his bedroom floor. So obviously the reason why we have that very detailed description of what happened to Robert Peast is because that is from the confession that Gacy gave to his attorneys. And we stated this before. His attorneys obviously broke attorney-client privilege.
Still having problems with it.
I'm still having problems with it. To reveal those tapes, because that obviously could be protected information since it was given in the presence of his attorneys while he was under arrest awaiting trial.
There like a statute of limitations in time after someone has died to where it could be released?
You know, I want to say that maybe upon death, because like I had mentioned last week, Kathleen Zellner, who it turns out was actually a consultant on the Johnny Depp case, and also was working with Stephen Avery and has worked with other people on post-conviction work. Used to be a criminal defense attorney, and she had broken attorney-client privilege after her client died and admitted to killing a bunch of people, and she could not live with that guilt that she helped get him off on a technicality because of that, which is why she left criminal defense and then started doing post-conviction.
Yeah.
So some of this is obviously, you could walk into the pharmacy if you're a cop and question the girl that was working with him, because they did say there was another girl that was there working with him, and she's the one that revealed the information that he was talking to the contractor, to his mother, and said that he never came back. So we could piece that together pretty easily. And I think if I remember correctly, though, that store had cameras all the way back in 1978, because they had the interaction, I want to say, between Peast and Gacy on video.
I think so. That's why they went to him, is because I think they had him on camera.
On video, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but obviously everybody in town knows who he is, and if he's
the
talking
owner
to
does.
Right, yeah. And I was gonna say, if he was talking to the owner about a renovation, they obviously can put him in the building around the same time as Peast and kind of put together that he's one of the last people to see Peast alive. But I did not realize that it was that soon after the altercation at the pharmacy that Peast was dead. That to me is the shocking part of the whole thing. I would have thought that there would have been a little bit more time, in between that. Now, maybe there would have been if Gacy hadn't been interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is something that I did not know and that they did not mention in the documentary. But by him getting interrupted by that phone call, because we do know that there were times when he would resuscitate the victims just to torture, rape, and kill more, so he gets more time with those bodies. So I'm wondering if maybe that was an accident. Just knowing what we know from Gacy's MO for the 32 other bodies.
Yep. The phone call went too long, or maybe he had the rope too tighter than he normally would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's any number of things.
Yes.
Any number of things that could have happened there. But yeah, we're at about 52 minutes, so that worked out perfect. We got through all the victims of Gacy finally.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we did 2 weeks, guys. This is why we did 2 weeks. Too many bodies to handle in 1 week. Too much information to try to get through in 1 week. So, final thoughts here on the 33 victims of John Gacy before we get into the investigation and trial.
It's just there were so many opportunities for him to have been caught that he somehow, one way or another, was able to get away with it for as long as he did. Like,
slip right through the fingers.
Yeah. Like if he hadn't have like taken Robert Piest, then like who knows? He may it could have been another 10 years before he was caught, if he was ever caught at all.
I was gonna say it could have been another Zodiac. We might have still not known.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, eventually that house would have stank to the point to where somebody would have said something, though.
Yep.
And too many bodies would have ended up in the Des Plaines River, to where they would have to put 2 and 2 together and be like, look, we just saw that dude working with John Wayne Gacy, or something would have eventually caught up to him, you would think.
Right.
But he was very smart. He was very smart in having these people move in with him officially so that their family didn't miss them, or because of the time we're talking about where they can't pull digital records of voicemails and things like that. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just let me remind everybody that just because you delete that voicemail off your phone or out of your visual voicemail does not mean that AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or Sprint does not have a copy of it somewhere over the rainbow in their cloud server.
Yep.
So all those dick pics you guys be sending, they exist somewhere.
There's not a Zoom big enough for me to do that.
I'm sorry to hear that, sir.
Learn to live with it.
But yeah, no, I agree. Too many opportunities for him to have been caught where, this is Gacy, this is the cops.
Yep.
Just like a super bouncy ball off a wall. But Josh, the man, a few words. What do you have to say about everything that we've uncovered so far?
Yeah, it's definitely out there.
Anything you want to add?
I don't think so. The look you're giving me. I'm sorry.
Need you to stop talking. We're trying to get some things out, but we can't do that while you're saying all this.
Yeah. Exactly.
He's just taking over the whole show.
Right? I know. Let's say something, please. Gosh.
Exactly. Yeah.
God damn it, Bobby. So Beavis and Butthead's coming back.
I know. I'm so excited.
Yes. I know.
In modern time.
That should be funny.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Why? Oh,
It would help if you turn your own microphone on, sir.
Right?
why?
The world needs Beavis and Butthead.
I don't.
We need some intelligent television.
Damn straight.
I didn't like the original stuff. I never watched it.
Well, how could you say you didn't like it if you never watched it?
It's just not something I was into.
I mean, I didn't get into them until, Do America comes out.
Way late, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean it was one of those things where it's just like I need something stupid and irrelevant
Mhm.
to everything. And it was there, and then South Park came out not too long after that. And did you see Streaming Wars yet?
I haven't. That I need to. But I was watching Stranger Things and The Boys and stuff like that. So I'm about caught up for that now. So I need to watch that.
So good. So good. Something happens in Streaming Wars that makes me wonder, is this going to carry over into the next season?
Actually, I need to finish this newest season too.
It's only 6 episodes.
Yeah. I think I watched the first episode, and then as per usual, so many other things come out, and I lose track of time on what else I need to watch.
I waited until it came to HBO Max so I could watch them uncensored. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it's about that time.
Yes.
We can cut to a break.
Mhm.
And when we come back, the investigation that led the police to finding John Wayne Gacy, the surveillance that actually led to the creation of these tapes between him and his attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way that his attorney broke attorney-client privilege as well. I said it!
What was it?
Attorney-client privilege.
No, I tried to mess him up.
Nope. He's got it now.
Just wait till
And
I have it again.
And then when he sued the police for the surveillance, and then the second search warrant, the tapes that we've been talking about that led to this special, and everything that followed that. So we'll be right back here on Money's Crazy Mind and Crossing the Mic.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.
Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test. Expect nothing less, you check as I'm chess, what's happening next?
He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, it's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just wrote an obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I leave an impression and take a redemption, just kill no discretion. Your mind is a weapon, 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they see me. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they drag the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I want to be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft. You can change lives. You create thoughts. Never waste time. You got one shot. You got one life. Better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. 9-5, no mean boss. Just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way. What I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.
But like sheep, both feet hurting easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep, only scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try to change, you can say no, free me.
But it's too late now. I remember you and me, and how careless we could be.
All day and all night, we'd stay up, it felt so right. We were so young, we were so dumb. We would get drunk and then hook up. We were okay, we were alright, staying awake till the sunrise. We were in love, couldn't stop us, like a good drug, never run. We hook up in my car, driving so far, play you guitar, you'd show me your art, let down our guards, think with our hearts, stare at the stars. We were never apart, drinking too young, way too much fun, out in the sun, open when it's gone. Took you to prom, dance to our song, dance all night long till the lights come on.
It's too late now. I remember everything, and how careless we got. It's too late now. I remember you and me, and how careless we.
It's too late now, I remember everything, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be. And how careless we could be. And how careless we could be. Late nights, long fights, it felt right, we were alive. We would go out, we were so loud, we were so proud, we had no doubts. Weekends and weekdays, we'd spend our own way. We were careless, we were fearless, we were reckless, time was precious. We loved to waste time, whiskey and wine, drinking all night, asleep by your side. Finally alive, we would just drive, never arrive. Our journey was live, staying out late, testing our fate, running away. We live for today, young and so bold, never get old. Screw what we're told, we can't be controlled.
It's too late now. I remember everything, and how careless we got. It's too late now. I remember you and me, and how careless we.
It's too late now, I remember everything, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be. And how careless we could be. And how careless we could be. And how careless we could be.
Too late now. I remember you and me. And how careless we could be.
My hands steady, I feel ready, but my legs heavy, I don't get it. How come I haven't hit it already? Still working, I'm still learning, I'm still searching, finally earning something, finally turning something called a profit. If I hear you talking shit, don't get caught in it. I'll be popping off and hit your ass, dropping all your shit. Yeah, I promise this, I got promises, you ain't stopping this. Cross my shit, you'll be knocked unconscious, bitch. That's the consequence, I got this, I will not quit. Man, I'm on it, honest, I'm gonna launch quick, then I'm gone. It's just a matter of time before I'm over the climb and moving under my prime. Just quit my 9 to 5, I'm rocking and they watching, cause it's shocking. Dropping all these top 10 songs, so stopping. It's time to live my life, it's time to live my die. Wish I could slow down time and just enjoy the climb.
And I'm the one to get it, bro. I swear to God, I get it, bro. So don't just let me get it.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm gonna get it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one to get it, bro. I swear to God, I'll get it, bro. Hey, I ain't never giving up. Yeah, I never give up. I got this, man, I got it. I will not quit, I'm on it. Never rock it. Got the block lit, I'm toxic. Spitting logic, make them nauseous. Honest, then I stuck it. Never cautious, drop it. I'm the hardest. Rock, bitch, watch it. I'm the fucking king of rock, bitch. Drop it. Spitting hot shit. I'm dropping, chronic. I think I'm motherfucking lost it. Facts, better facts. Making racks where it's at. Have my back to the mat. Not an act, that's a fact. We attack in a back. So we act, Think I'm black, up the jack. All I'm rap, not the step. Throw it down, give a crack. We're advanced, I'm the best. Got a plan better than most brands. Goddamn, I'm a bomb till I die. Never lie, that's a lie. I don't try, I defy. Get the time that I'm right, yeah. I've been in and out the studio like a student though, working on a movement, yeah, I'll do it cause I'm in the zone. And you know that I'm ready for the shows. How it goes, I don't know, but I'm waiting till I'm chose. Run, roll, here I go. All these people wanna know what you think of them lately. Do you really love me or do you really hate me? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you grade me? All this social media has got me going crazy lately. Everything's inflated, mainly everyone's invaded. Privacy is naked, man, I really hate it. God, I really hate it. I just wanna make
2,000 years later.
I mean, it definitely seemed like 2,000 years later. Okay, so after luring Rignall into his car, with an offer to smoke marijuana, Gacy subdued him, tortured and rapes him. Rignall accepted $3,000 to settle the legal charges, and then goes on to recount the experience in the book 29 Below.
Okay.
So Gacy never saw prison for that.
Yep.
All right. So we are at the point now where we talk about the investigation, the surveillance, the search warrants, all the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back, everybody, to a very special Crossing the Mic and Money's Crazy Mind crossover event. We are discussing Confessions of a Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes, directed by Paradise Lost, the child murders in the Robin Hood Hills, Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, Brothers Keeper director Joe Berlinger. I was busy during the break.
Yeah, still got
All
the
right.
Paradise Lost ones added to my list I need to watch, but I'll get around
Yeah,
to
Brothers Keeper is a good one. Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, obviously talks about the time when they almost broke up in the early 2000s after James went to rehab and Jason quit the band and all that fun stuff. I actually got to see that for free because I was
Nice.
a member of the Metallica fan club back then. So, all right, but the investigation started when Peast failed to return home. His family filed a missing person report with the Plains Police. So it was the store owner that named Gacy as the contractor Peast likely left the store with to talk about a job. Kasenchak, whose son attended Maine West High School, like Peast, chose to investigate Gacy. They visited Gacy at home the following evening, and they decided to do a routine criminal background, revealed that he had an outstanding battery charge against him in Chicago and had served a prison sentence in Iowa for sodomy. So obviously, red flag starts waving. They visited Gacy the following evening. Gacy indicated that he had seen two youths working at the pharmacy, and then he had asked one of them, whom he believed to be Peast, whether there were any remodeling jobs behind the store, remodeling materials behind the store. He was adamant, however, that he had not offered Peast a job and had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. as he had left his appointment book in the store. Gacy promised to come to the station later that evening to make a statement confirming this, indicating that he was unable to do so at that moment as his uncle had just died. When questioned and asked how soon he could come to the station, he responded, "You guys are very rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?"
That's rich.
This would become a running theme throughout the documentary as well, trying to get him in there, trying to get him to talk to him about the disappearance of Peast and everything like that. He constantly came up with new excuses. First, it was his dead uncle. Then it was that he had a job out in Chicago that he had to go take care of. And there was just a litany, if you would, of excuses as to why he could not come to discuss the disappearance of Peast. So I want to say it was about a week later or so, he finally showed up.
Yeah,
it was at
something like that.
Yeah, it was at 3:20 in the morning. Gacy arrived at the police station covered in mud, claiming he had been involved in a car accident. On returning to the police station later that day, Gacy denied any involvement in Peast's disappearance and repeated that he had not offered him a job. When asked why he had returned to the pharmacy, Gacy reiterated that he had done so in response to a phone call from the owner, informing he had left his appointment book at the store. What Gacy didn't know, the detectives had already spoken to Torf, who denied calling Gacy. At the request of detectives, Gacy prepared a written statement detailing his movements on December 11th. Already pretty suspicious that it takes you a week to show up to clear your name. 100%, if you were innocent and you were adamant that you were innocent, and police came knocking on your door saying, "We think you killed some dude," or you're involved in their disappearance, because they don't know that he's dead yet at this point, you'd be on the first thing hopping.
Yeah.
Or at least I would be.
No, I'm with you on that.
I don't know about Quiet Boy over there, but I mean, what about you, Josh? I mean, if you were innocent of something and you had police come knocking on your door accusing you of something, you'd be on the first thing hot to the police station to clear your name, I would think, right?
I would think so.
All right. So they get a search warrant suspecting that Gacy might be holding Peast against his will. They get the search warrant on December 13th, so 3 days after Peast's disappearance. Gacy's property reveals the suspicious items, including police badges, 6mm Beretta, a syringe, and a hypodermic needle. found handcuffs, several books on homosexuality and pederasty. I'm guessing it was about pedophilia.
Yep. I just clicked on that link that's on there. Yeah, sexual relationship between an adult man and a pubescent or adolescent boy.
Ew.
Yeah.
With titles such as The Great White Swallow
Ugh.
and Pretty Boys Must Die. Kind of tells me where he got the idea to kill a bunch of motherfuckers from.
Yeah.
7 pornographic films, capsules of amyl nitrate, and an 18-inch dildo in Gacy's bedroom. A 39-inch 2x4 with holes drilled into each end, bottles of Valium of atropine. Several driver's licenses were found in the northwest bedroom. Blue hooded parka was found atop a toolbox inside the laundry room. And underwear too small to fit Gacy was located inside a bathroom closet. Wow.
Yeah.
In the northwest bedroom, investigators found a class of 1975 Maine West High School ring engraved with the initials JAS. Investigators also recovered a Nissan pharmacy photo receipt from a trash can alongside a 36-inch section of nylon rope. Well, I think that 3-foot section of nylon rope ended up in an evidence bag to make sure that there were no skin or blood cells on it. What do you think?
I'd like to think so, but at the same time, nothing ever came from any of the other stuff they found from that first search warrant. So,
but I mean, you would think you find several police badges. So already you got him on impersonating a police officer, a felony.
Yep.
You got a 6mm Beretta starter pistol, which is probably the gun he used to antagonize some people. A hypodermic needle, handcuffs, a book called Pretty Boys Must Die, capsules of amyl nitrate, and a 2x4 with holes drilled into each end. Oh, yeah, and underwear that won't fit his fat ass. Right there, you got him dead to rights. Oh, did I forget to mention the 1975 Maine West High School ring? Gee, I think John Wayne Gacy was a little bit old to be graduating high school in 1975. And I don't think his initials are JAS. But like you said, nothing really ever came of that first search warrant. Investigators wanted more, excuse me, and knew that they would have to do a deeper search of the house in order to find more. It was finding a judge that would grant a second police warrant, search warrant.
Yep.
So instead of just letting John Wayne Gacy go about his business and possibly hide evidence all over the state of Illinois, they decided to follow him. This prompted Gacy to contact a friend of his who was an attorney to say, hey, bud, find out why the Des Plaines Police Department is following me around like I got crack hanging out of my ass. So they contact him. Or he contacts them, I should say, his attorney. And this, again, is another reason why I say attorney-client privilege was breached. Hey, 3 in a row. Was breached because he's the one who revealed that Gacy called him. So they get the phone call from Rossi, who informed the investigators that Godzik's disappearance and the fact that he was another employee. And then you got Charles Hatula had been found drowned in the Illinois River a year earlier. So now that's 2 bodies of Gacy's that could be linked to his that are being found.
Yep.
They obtained further details on Gacy's battery charge, learning that the complainant, Jeffrey Rignall, had reported that Gacy lured him into his car, chloroformed him, raped him, tortured him, and then dumped him with severe chest and facial burns and rectal bleeding. Fucking ow.
Yeah.
In Lincoln Park the following morning, in an interview with Gacy's former wife the same day, they learned of the disappearance of John Butkovic. So here you go. Within the course of 3 days, they are discovering bodies. They've been interviewed with John Rignall. They've interviewed his ex-wife. And now they're learning of John Butkovic.
Mm-hmm.
The stack of bodies is starting to add up for John Wayne Gacy. The same day, the main high school ring was traced to John Allen Zick. An interview with Zick's mother revealed that several items from her son's apartment were also missing, including a Motorola television set. Now, that information was given in the documentary, and that television, I believe they later found in Gacy's garage, I want to say. If I remember correctly.
Trying to remember myself.
But they did find it on his property, I want to say.
Yes.
Either that or they found it with a friend of his or something like that.
Yeah.
By December 16th, so here we are, just 5 days removed from the disappearance of Peast. Gacy was becoming affable with the surveillance detectives, regularly inviting them to join him for meals, occasionally for drinks. He repeatedly denied that he had anything to do with Peast's disappearance and accused the officers of harassing him because of his political connections or because of his recreational drug use. No, it's because a list of bodies are ending up on the Des Plaines Police Department desk, and all of them are in some way linked to you, sir. Knowing these officers weren't likely to arrest him for anything trivial, he taunted them by flouting traffic laws and succeeding in losing his pursuers more than once. That afternoon, Cram contested to a police interview in which he described Gacy's hardworking lifestyle, open-minded attitude about sex between men. Cram also revealed that because of his poor timekeeping, Gacy had once given him a watch, explaining he got it from a dead person. Now, I want to say that Cram was his attorney, right? Because that's the first time I'm seeing that name.
I don't know. It's too much to go back through to.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that name will come up again.
Yes.
So here we are, December 17th now, 6 days removed. He informed Gacy that had sold Zick's vehicle to him. Oh, they interviewed Rossi again.
Mm-hmm.
And he informed Gacy that had sold Zick's vehicle to him, explaining that he had bought the car from Zick because he needed money to move to California. Further examination of Gacy's automobile was conducted. In the course of the examining the trunk of the vehicle, investigators discovered a small cluster of fibers they suspected to be human hair. That evening, officers conducted a test using 3 trained German Shepherd search dogs to determine whether Peast had been present in any of Gacy's vehicles. One dog approached Gacy's Oldsmobile and lay on the passenger seat, and what the dog's handler informed investigators was a death reaction, indicating Peast's body had been present in the vehicle. I've seen that before. Those cadaver dogs are trained to do different things. If they pick up on the set, normally they'll walk around in a circle. If they detect a dead body in the area, they'll start digging to see if they can find it. If they detect the presence that a dead body had been in the area, they'll lay down, just kind of like what they said here. So I've seen that before, so that makes sense for people saying, oh, well, the dog maybe just laid down because it was tired. No, it's trained to do different things for different situations. That evening, Gacy invited detectives Albrecht and Hamster to a restaurant for a meal. It's Hamsterville! Sorry, Lilo and Stitch moment. In the early hours of December 18th, he invited them into another restaurant where over breakfast he talked of his business, his marriages, and his activities as a registered clown. At one point during the conversation, Gacy remarked, clowns can get away with murder.
Silver plate, man. Silver plate.
Well, maybe if your names are Violent J and Shaggy, but they've never murdered anybody either. So, whoop whoop to my Much Clown Love family. Yes, I have one of their symbols tattooed. Okay, so here's the civil suit. By December 18th, Gacy started showing signs of strain from the constant surveillance. He was unshaven, looked tired, appeared anxious, and was drinking heavily. That afternoon, he drove to his lawyer's office to prepare a $750,000 civil suit against the Des Plaines police, demanding they cease their surveillance. The same day, the serial number of the Nissan pharmacy photo receipt found in Gacy's kitchen was traced to 17-year-old Kimberly Byers, a colleague of Peast's at the Nissan pharmacy. Byers admitted when contacted in person the following day, she had worn the jacket on December 11th to shield herself from the cold. She had placed the receipt in the parka pocket just before she gave the coat to Peast as he left the store, claiming a contractor wanted to speak with him. This was brought up. I believe they actually interviewed her, did they not?
Yes. I think she was the first one to talk in the entire special.
You might be right. Kudos to Berlinger for making that happen.
Mm-hmm.
This statement contradicted Gacy's previous statements that he had no contact with Peast the evening of December 11th. So that was what we were talking about. They were talking to another person at the store. So that blue parka that they found in his basement is now a direct correlation to Peast being in his home. Are we starting to put the puzzle pieces together here, ladies and gentlemen?
I gotta hope so.
That statement led to the detectives finally being able to get a second search warrant. Rossi was interviewed a second time on the evening of the 18th. This time he was more cooperative. He informed detectives that in the summer of 77, at Gacy's behest, he had spread 10 bags of lime in the crawl space of Gacy's house. December 19th, investigators began compiling evidence for a second search warrant. The same day, Gacy's lawyers filed the civil suit against the police department. The hearing for the suit was scheduled for December 22nd. That afternoon, Gacy invited the surveillance detectives inside his house again. Officer Robinson distracted Gacy with conversation. Officer Schultz walked into Gacy's bedroom in an unsuccessful attempt to write down the serial number of the Motorola TV that they had suspected belonged to Zick. So there it was. It was in his bedroom. While flushing Gacy's toilet, the officer noticed a smell he suspected could be that of rotting corpses emanating from a heating duct. The officers who had searched Gacy's house previously had failed to notice this, as the house had been cold. Investigators interviewed both Cram and Rossi on December 20th. Rossi had agreed to be interviewed in relation to his possible links with Zick, as well as the disappearance of Robert Peast. When questioned by detectives to where he believed Gacy had concealed Peast's body, Rossi replied Gacy may have put the body in the crawl space, adding that he thought Zick's car was stolen. Rossi agreed to submit to a polygraph. He denied any involvement in Peast's disappearance, also denying any knowledge of his whereabouts. He soon refused to continue the questioning, and the erratic, inconsistent responses to questions while attached to the polygraph machine rendered them unable to render a definite opinion as to the truthfulness. Rossi did, however, further discuss the trench digging he did in the crawl space and remarked on Gacy's insistence that he not deviate from where he was instructed to dig. So basically, he was digging a mass grave.
Mm-hmm.
Cram informed investigators of Gacy's attempts to rape him in 1976. Also stated that he and Gacy had returned home after the 13th search of his property. Gacy had turned pale after seeing a clot of mud on his carpet, which he suspected had come from the crawl space. Cram said Gacy grabbed a flashlight and immediately entered the crawl space to look for evidence of digging. When asked whether he had been to the crawl space, Cram replied he'd once been asked by Gacy to spread lime down there and had also dug trenches, which Gacy explained were for drainage pipes. Cram stated these trenches were 2 feet wide, 6 feet long, and 2 feet deep, the size of graves. By this point, even after the second search warrant, Gacy has still not been arrested.
Yep.
On the evening of December 20th, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office in Ridge Park to attend a scheduled meeting, ostensibly to discuss the progress of the civil suit. On his arrival, Gacy appeared disheveled and immediately asked for alcohol, whereupon Sam Aramanti, that was his lawyer's name,
Yes.
fetched a bottle of whiskey from his car. On his return, Amaranti asked Gacy what he had to discuss with them. Gacy picked up a copy of the Daily Herald, pointed to a front page article covering the disappearance of Robert Peast, and said, "This boy is dead. He's dead. He's in a river." Ladies and gentlemen, Lawyer 101, attorney there we go again. Attorney-client privilege. If your client confesses to you that they murdered a boy disappearing on the front page, you cannot legally tell police he confessed. This is why I personally believe attorney-client privilege is bullshit. Gacy then proceeded to give the rambling confession that ran into the early hours of the following morning. He began by look at that. I just can't talk in general. He began by informing Aramonte and Stevens that he had been the judge, jury, and executioner of many people, and he now wanted to be the same for himself. He buried most of the victims in the crawl space, had disposed of 5 other bodies in the Des Plaines River. Gary dismissed his victims as male prostitutes, hustlers, and liars to whom he gave the rope trick, adding he sometimes awoke to find dead, strangled kids on his floor with their hands cuffed behind their backs. He buried their bodies in the crawl space as he believed they were his property. All right, I'm going to kind of paraphrase this here a little bit, but Gacy was pretty much drunk, fell asleep midway through the confession. His lawyer arranged for a psychiatric appointment. Upon awakening, Gacy shook his head when informed by his lawyer he had confessed to killing approximately 30 people, saying, "Well, I can't think about this right now. I've got things to do." Ignoring his lawyer's advice regarding his scheduled appointment, Gacy left their office to attend to the needs of his business. Oh my God. I have never been drunk enough to confess to murder.
No.
But I've also never murdered anybody.
Right.
So Therefore, I have no reason to get drunk and confess to a bunch of shit.
Mhm.
But here's where he gets himself into trouble. He started confessing to murder before he started drinking alcohol. So even if he did try sitting there saying his lawyer got him drunk and then got him to confess to murder, you started confessing before you were drunk, sir.
Yep.
So Gacy later recollected his memories of the final day of freedom as being hazy. He knew his arrest was inevitable, and he intended to visit his friends and say his final farewells. After leaving his attorney's office, Gacy drove to a gas station where, in the course of filling up his rental car, handed a small bag of cannabis to the attendant, who immediately handed the bag to the surveillance officers, adding that Gacy had told him, "The end is coming. These guys are going to kill me." Gacy then drove to the home of a fellow contractor and friend, Ronald Rode, hugged Rode before bursting into tears. "I've been a bad boy. I killed 30 people, give or take a few." So he's sober when he said that.
Mm-hmm.
He left Rode, drove to Cram's home to meet with Cram and Rossi. As he drove along the expressway, surveillance officers noted he was holding a rosary to his chin, praying. After talking with Cram and Rossi, Gacy had Cram drive him to the scheduled meeting with the lawyer. Gacy spoke with Stevens. Cram informed the surveillance officers that Gacy told him and Rossi that he confessed over 30 murders with his lawyers the previous evening. So apparently, mother puss bucket, man. Attorney-client privilege means nothing to Gacy since he just fucking broke it.
Mhm.
At that point, it no longer becomes privileged information, and his attorneys can release it to the public. There we go. That information was never revealed in the documentary. That's why I thought it was still under the means of attorney-client privilege.
Mhm.
Cram then drove him to Maryhill Cemetery, where his father was buried. Armed with a search warrant, the police and I skipped a bunch of stuff here because that stuff's not really important.
Yep.
Okay, so on the eve of the hearing for the civil suit, judge granted the request for the second search warrant. Police informed Gacy of their intentions to search his crawl space for the bodies of Peast. Gacy denied the teenager was buried there, but confessed to having killed in self-defense a young man whose body was buried under his garage. Armed with the second warrant, police and evidence technicians drove to Gacy's home. Upon their arrival, officers found Gacy had unplugged his sump pump, flooding the crawl space with water to clear it. They simply replaced the plug and waited for it to drain. After it had done so, evidence technicians entered the 28 by 38 foot crawl space, crawled to the southwest area, and began digging. Within minutes, they had uncovered flesh and human bone. Gently immediately shouted to the investigator that they could charge Gacy with murder. "I think this place is full of kids." A police photographer then dug in the northwest corner of the crawl space, uncovering a patella. The two began digging in the southeast corner, uncovering 2 lower leg bones. Victims were too decomposed to be pieced, as the body discovered in the northwest corner was later unearthed. Crime scene technician discovered the skull of a second victim along the floor. Later excavations of the feet. Obviously, they found 26 bodies in crawl space. Obviously, Gacy was then arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Accompanied by police, his lawyers, and his other sister, Gacy was driven to the I-55 bridge to pinpoint the precise spot where he confessed to having thrown the body of Peast and 4 other victims. Gacy was taken to his house and instructed to mark his garage floor with orange spray paint to show where he had buried the individuals he supposedly killed in self-defense, whom he had named John Butkovic. So we had talked about how he had already planned to conceal the corpses even further by covering the entire crawl space with concrete. And they showed him evidence of other bodies and everything like that. But I do have the picture of the crawl space and where all the bodies were that he had drawn for investigators. So I'm going to bring that up here real quick just to give everybody an idea of how Gacy had planned all of this out. Here we go. It's slightly pixelated, but the damn thing's also almost 50 years old. So there we go. That's the picture of the floorboards and everything that Gacy had drawn for the investigators. I'll make it big on the screen here for everybody to see. All of the lines and kind of scribbles and where you see some of the numbers and things like that is where he says bodies were buried, or how many bodies were buried in that location. And then to the right of that little hand-drawn picture is the actual layout of his basement, and where all these black lines are that are on there is where the police discovered bodies and how many bodies they uncovered. Just to kind of give everybody an idea of what exactly was found in the basement of John Wayne Gacy's house. So obviously the search continued not only in the crawl space, but in the Des Plaines River. We already attested that they found 4 bodies in the Des Plaines River, 26 in the crawl space. We've talked at length about that. He was brought to trial on February 6th, charged with 33 murders. He was tried in Cook County, Illinois, before Judge Louis Garippo. Jury selected from Rockford because of the extensive press coverage in Cook County. That is a very common practice in trials where there's a high-profile case. You try to get a jury from outside the area of where the most press was, because rule number 1 of being a juror, if you know something about the case, you can form an opinion about the case before hearing evidence. Therefore, you become a biased observer, and you could potentially skew the rest of your fellow jurors to leaning your way, skewing a verdict. The same thing happened in the O.J. Simpson trial. That's why it took them so long to conduct a jury from that, and why they had so many alternates, and why that trial took way longer than it should have.
Yeah.
So at the defense counsel's request, Gacy spent 300 hours with doctors from the Menard Correction Center in the year before his trial, underwent a variety of psychiatric tests to determine whether he was mentally competent to stand trial. Gacy attempted to convince the doctors he had multiple personality disorder. He claimed to have 4 personalities: hardworking, civic-minded contractor, the clown, the active politician, and a policeman called Jack Hanley, whom he referred to as Bad Jack. When Gacy confessed to police, he claimed to be relaying the crimes of Jack, who detested homosexuality and viewed male prostitutes as weak, stupid, degraded scum. His lawyers opted to have him plead not guilty by reason of insanity, presenting Gacy as Jekyll and Hyde. The defense produced several psychiatric experts who examined Gacy. These experts at Gacy's trial testified they found him to be a paranoid schizophrenic with multiple personalities. Could that have been possible?
Probably.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not saying that it couldn't. I don't think.
Given everything that I know about multiple personality disorder and even schizophrenia for that matter, if you are one of your other personalities or you are portraying the character of one of your other personalities, the main personality doesn't know what the other personality does. So that for Gacy to sit there and say that he was relaying what Bad Jack had done, he would have no idea what Bad Jack had done. I mean, if you look at movies like Split, or even like shows like Psych and Monk that have done multiple personality stories, the main did not know what the submissives were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they thought, oh my God, I'm being stalked, or somebody's breaking into my home, or
Haunted.
whatever. Exactly. So that's the only reason why I don't think that he actually did have multiple personality disorder. However, back in 1978, if you even just, let's say, were an actor that got stuck in a character, you could be found schizophrenic because they didn't understand schizophrenia the way that they do today. But based on today's science, he does not fit into the category of having multiple personality disorder or even a paranoid schizophrenic. So we can say that. Prosecutors presented the case that Gacy was sane and in full control of his actions. To support the contention, they produced several witnesses to testify the premeditation of Gacy's actions, the efforts he took to escape detection. That's another reason right there. Those doctors refuted the defense's doctors' claims of multiple personalities and insane. Cram and Rossi testified that Gacy made them dug drainage trenches and spread bags of lime into the crawl space, which would assume that Gacy knew those bodies were there, whether or not they were Bad Jacks or not. Both said Gacy looked periodically into the crawl space to ensure that they and other employees they supervised did not deviate from the precise locations he marked, which says to me he knows where the bodies are hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Stein testified that all the bodies recovered from Gacy's property were markedly decomposed and putrefied skeletal remains, and that all of the autopsies he performed, 13 victims had died of asphyxiation, 6 of ligature strangulation, 1 of multiple stab wounds to the chest, and 10 in undetermined ways. When Gacy's defense team suggested that all 33 deaths were caused by accidental erotic asphyxia, Stein called this highly improbable. So erotic asphyxia existed even back then.
Yeah. How else did David Carradine get into it?
That's autoerotic. But I see your point. Rignall testified on behalf of the defense. Interesting. Recounting his ordeal, Rignall was wept repeatedly while describing Gacy's torture of him in March of 1978. Asked whether Gacy appreciated the criminality of his actions, Rignall said he believed that Gacy was unable to conform his actions to the law's expectations because of the beastly and animalistic way he attacked me. During cross-examination relating to the torture, Rignall vomited and was excused. Donald Voorhees, whom Gacy sexually assaulted in 1967, testified to his ordeal at Gacy's hands and his subsequent attempts to dissuade him from testifying by paying another youth to spray mace in his face and beat him. Wow, he left that conveniently out of his interview in the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so on and so forth here. Obviously we all know what Gacy did. In the closing arguments, obviously both sides were contesting. Obviously, his attorney was still trying to contest to the fact that he was schizophrenic and had multiple personality disorder. In the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for more than 2 hours before sentencing Gacy to death for each murder committed after the Illinois statute on capital punishment came into effect in June 1977. His execution was set for June 2nd, 1980. On February 15th, 1983, a fellow death row inmate known as the I-57 killer stabbed Gacy in the upper arm with a sharpened wire as Gacy was participating in a voluntary work program. A second death row inmate injured in the attack, William Jones, received a superficial stab wound to the head. Ouch. Both received treatment in the prison hospital. Before his trial, Gacy initiated contract with journalist Russ Ewing, to whom he granted numerous interviews between 1979 and 1981. Ewing later collaborated with an author, Tim Cahill, to publish the book Buried Dreams. Information Gacy divulged to Ewing regarding the circumstances of his first murder would prove instrumental in establishing the identity of his first victim. Gacy started reading law books to appeal his crime. He did not prevail in any of them. His appeals related to issues such as the validity of the first search warrant and his objection to his lawyer's insanity pleas defense at the trial. Gacy also contended that although he had some knowledge of 5 murders, those of McCoy, Bukovic, Godsick, Zick, and Priest, the other 28 had been committed by employees who had keys to his house while he was away on business trips.
Which goes back to him putting blame on anyone but himself.
Exactly. In 1984, the Supreme Court upheld Gacy's conviction, ordered his execution by lethal injection on November 14th. Gacy filed for an appeal against this decision, which was denied on March 4th, 1985. The following year, Gacy filed a further post-conviction petition seeking a new trial. His then defense lawyer, Richard King, argued that Gacy had been provided with an ineffective counsel at his 1980 trial. This post-conviction petition was dismissed in 1986. Gacy appealed the 1985 decision that he be executed. Supreme Court upheld its conviction in 1988, setting a new execution date of January 11th, 1989. After the Supreme Court denied Gacy's final appeal in October of 1993, the Illinois Supreme Court formally set an execution date for May 10th, 1994. On May 9th of 1994, Gacy was transferred to the Roanoke Correctional Facility to Stateville Correctional Facility in Crest Hill to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family. For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. That evening, he observed a prayer with a Catholic priest before being escorted to the Stateville execution chamber to receive a lethal injection. Before the injection, the chemicals used to effect the execution solidified unexpectedly, clogging the IV tube used to administer the chemicals into Gacy's arm, complicating the procedure. Blinds covering the window through which witnesses observed the execution were drawn. The execution team replaced the clogged tube. After 10 minutes, the blinds were reopened. The execution resumed. The entire procedure took 18 minutes. Anesthesiologists blamed the problem on the prison officials' inexperience at conducting an execution, saying that had the correct execution procedures been followed, the complications would have never occurred. Gacy was diagnosed a psychopath who did not express any remorse for his crimes. In his final statement to his lawyers before his execution was that killing him would not compensate for the loss of others, and the state was murdering him. His final spoken words were "kiss my ass."
Seems appropriate.
So out of 33 victims, 5 are still unidentified. Body 28 in the backyard. Body 26, crawl space. Body 13, crawl space. Body 21, crawl space. And body 10, crawl space. At the time of Gacy's arrest, he had claimed to both Des Moines police and Chicago investigators that the total number of murder victims could be as high as 45. They excavated the property all the way down to the clay beneath the foundation, finding a total of 29 bodies. Shortly after his arrest, Gacy informed investigators that he had assaulted, then released Jeffrey Rignall. He began to throw his murder victims into the Des Plaines River. Confessed to having disposed of 5 bodies in this matter. 4 were found from the Des Plaines River that were linked to him. So there must have been other bodies there, but those were the only 4 they could link to him. When asked whether there were more victims, Gacy stated, "That's for you to find out." In the 80s, Gacy informed FBI profile Robert Ressler that 2 or 3 PDM employees had assisted him in several murders. Ressler believed that there were unexplained avenues to the case and that Gacy had killed more than 33 people in multiple states. Gacy neither confirmed nor denied Ressler's suspicions. Rignall, who had been assaulted and tortured by Gacy, was adamant that at one point during his abuse and torture, a young man with blonde hair had knelt before him and watched his abuse. Rignall also said that he saw a light come on in another part of the house. So Gacy had began painting in prison, and these paintings have sold for multi-millions of dollars. Many of Gacy's printings have been displayed in exhibitions as well. So the documentaries that I was aware of are John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. It was commissioned for Peacock. And it's a 6-part series with interviews with Gacy, investigators responsible for his apprehension, and Cook County Sheriff Thomas Dart. Obviously, there's also the one that we watched, Conversations with the Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes, commissioned by Netflix, directed by Joe Berlinger. Series includes previously unreleased recordings of conversations between Gacy and his lawyer, and was broadcast on April 20th, 2022. So that is a fairly new documentary itself. Other than that, there's been made-for-TV movies. A slew of big-name people have portrayed Gacy in the past. To Catch a Killer, starring Brian Dennehy. Obviously, the guy who was trying to chase down John Rambo in the original First Blood. Who kind of looks like Gacy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Now that I'm thinking about it. And that was in 92, so that wasn't too long after First Blood.
Yep.
A feature film, Gacy, was released in 2003.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, I own that one.
Yeah.
And that cast Mark Holton as Gacy. Dear Mr. Gacy, released in 2010, stars William Forsythe as Gacy. And that's based upon the book The Last Victim, written by Jason Moss. Film focuses upon the correspondence between Moss and Gacy before Gacy invited Moss to visit him on death row in 94. And then the horror film 8213 Gacy's House, released in 2010, based on paranormal investigators spending a night in the house on the former site of 8213 West Somerdale. Well, guys, that's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Final thoughts on Gacy?
Like I said it when we first started the last episode. What a piece of shit.
So obviously he was a psychopath. We
Yes.
cannot deny that. Anybody that kills 33 people is a psychopath.
Yep.
Now, whether or not he had other psychological disorders, that remains to be seen. I see no evidence that he had multiple personality disorder or any kinds of schizophrenia. Now, was he a sociopath? Most definitely. Was he intelligent? Most definitely. Did he use some of his psychological knowledge to possibly try to hide a lot of the things he was doing? Most definitely. And he was probably able to convince those doctors that he did have multiple personality disorder because he's hyper intelligent. We can't deny that. He got away with 33 murders for a very long time.
Yes.
Quiet one.
Not today.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting.
No thoughts whatsoever on some of the things that he said post trial, about him being having multiple personality disorder or anything like that.
Anything to do to hide.
Yep. It's not his fault. It's someone else's, including other personalities.
Sounds like somebody we know.
You know what? I mean, now that you say that, I mean, who finally to blame but the voices in his head?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously they weren't believing him when he said it was this person or that person or the 3 employees that worked for PDM that possibly murdered 28 of the 4 people, the 33 people that were buried under his house and thrown into the river. But he did himself in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
He admitted to one murder and where the body was hidden. But then he also had knowledge of the fact that one of the bodies that he threw off the bridge took off on a barge.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would have known that information but the person that put the body on the barge? Or launched the body onto the barge. But yeah, John Wayne Gacy's a sick mofo.
Yes.
And I can't believe that it took him almost 20 years to kill him.
Actually, I can, because I think, was it Night Stalker was in prison for, but I don't know the exact years, but I mean, he was in prison. I think he died in prison. Like, I don't think he was killed or, the death penalty, even though he was on death row for it. But didn't he? Actually, he may have been killed in prison.
Yeah, possible. I mean, I know that obviously Damien Eccles, one of the West Memphis 3, was on death row too because they had sentenced him to death. But because of appeals and evidence that was actually going to exonerate him, obviously they never put him to death.
Mm-hmm.
They attempted to kill him in other ways, but he was never put to death. Then thank God, because it turns out he was innocent, or at least a lot of people feel he's innocent. According to the state of Arkansas, he's still a convicted murderer. But what is the state of Arkansas now? But yeah, I mean,
so Richard Ramirez, Night Stalker, was on death row for
Yeah.
23 years and then died of complications to B-cell lymphoma. Yeah. In 2013, apparently.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I have heard of others that have been on death row that have died of other things. Robert Durst, had been convicted to death for the death of his best friend Susan Berman, I'm sorry. And then died from just negative health before he could be convicted of his third murder. That, you know, this is the idiot that confessed on HBO that he killed 3 people. So it's not unheard of. It's not unheard of, but I with the mountain of bodies and the mountain of evidence against John Wayne Gacy, you thought that they would have like put in a freaking express route in for a motherfucker like that. But you know, that we do have the appeals process, and he did seem to file them pretty quickly, but exhausted them also pretty quickly. So, you know, kudos to the investigators for the way that they ended this case. However, they probably could have caught him 3 or 4 times over if they had just been a little bit more diligent in their investigating prowess. And, you know, maybe just done their homework a little bit and found that sodomy case years prior. But anyway, guys, what you got coming up next week right here on Cross on the Mic?
Yeah, I don't know. Jurassic Park?
Yeah, we're going to talk about all the 3 Jurassic Park movies, and I guess after this weekend, the 3 Jurassic World movies.
That should be fun.
Yeah.
I want to see that
completely different direction than the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on the podcast, I got Ghostbusters Ireland on Wednesday, tomorrow. And then World's Strongest Man, JF Garone on Sunday.
Nice.
French Canadian. Sounds like it too. He sounds like Andre the Giant.
So go figure, on Ghostbusters Day, you have Ghostbusters Ireland on your podcast.
Check it out.
Did you plan that?
No, actually, I did this episode like a month and a half back. It was right after the one that Lee and I did. It might have been longer than a month and a half.
Yep.
Not bad. Well, this Friday night on Money's Crazy Mind, the true crime saga continues. However, I'm not going to tell you what I'm talking about. But ponder this. In 1984, a man walks into a San Diego McDonald's, and what follows is 77 minutes of pure terror.
That sounds like a repeat from last week. But that wasn't.
Well, I had set up my episode for this week, last week. Originally, last week, I was supposed to interview Dave, but Dave wasn't able to make it into the studio. So I ended up reviewing Stranger Things, the Maxwell Jacob Friedman promo from Dynamite.
I still need to watch that.
So good. So good. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial and South Park, the streaming wars. So when Dave's away, I review things. But yeah, no, this week, yeah, a man walks into a McDonald's and what follows is 77 minutes of sheer terror. So for more information on what happened in that McDonald's, check out Money's Crazy Mind this Friday night, 8 to 10 p.m. right here on Redline Radio LLC. That logo above my head. Yeah, that right there too.
Yep.
So congratulations, guys, on coming in hot. Over 1,800 views in your first month.
I felt special.
So, what do you guys feel about that? How do you feel about that first month going that strong?
Honestly, I mean, I try not to get hopes up on anything, but yeah, definitely was not expecting that.
Yeah, you guys had really strong numbers for your first month, so let's hope that continues to grow. But you know, thanks for having me as part of this 2-part special talking about John Wayne Gacy. It's been a lot of fun.
I'll be more talkative next week.
So, okay, I think I figured out what happened here. I think I figured it out. He invited me to come and do 2 weeks of their show so that he didn't have to talk. See, Secrets never stay hidden. Don't invite the true crime guy on your podcast and then don't expect him to figure out what the true incentive is for inviting him.
This is true.
Mhm.
All right, guys. Well, I'm nursing one hell of a freaking migraine here, so I'm done. I don't know if you guys noticed, but my eyes are barely open. So,
Yep.
promise,
So,
I'm not high. My head is just
no judgments.
I actually might be heading to the hospital here because this has been a 5-day migraine and it just will not go away. So,
Here we go.
Mm-hmm. All right.
all right. Well, thanks for checking out Money's Crazy Mind and Crossing the Mic. I am Lee motherfucking Money. And you guys, you can take us out this week since I took us out last week.
Yep. Oh, am I going to do it? All right. Okay. Well, until next week, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Jose.
All right. We're ending on that one.
Have
See
a
you
week,
next-
everybody.